At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thoughts on our show. We never have, incoherent people because we screen our guests. We have really cool people with great histories, backgrounds. Some of them are authors. Some of them are graduates of Bowling Green State University in Ohio. Go Buckeyes. He's a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, former lieutenant with his local fire department, founder of 2 successful startups and 3 global brands. His products are now used by over 80,000 firefighters and 3 of the nation's largest retailers, in addition to be carried by Home Depot. He is most recent venture. He's co-founded Velontra. It's like volare. Velontra, a company that focuses on hypersonic unmanned aerial systems for the U.S. Department of Defense and low Earth orbit access. That's a mouthful. He's also received the President of the United States E Award in Washington from President Trump for exporting, and has been honored as Exporter of the Year by the Ohio Small Business Administration. Been featured in Entrepreneur Magazine, Yahoo, MSN, USA Today, bunch of other local and national outlets. He's also testified in front of the U.S. House of Representatives Small Business Committee and was named Entrepreneur of the Year by Governor John Kasich. He's been elected by the Obama White House as one of the 10 entrepreneurs to represent the U.S. at the Global Entrepreneur Summit. His book, Warrior Entrepreneur, was released in late 2021 and became #1 on Amazon in several different countries. It focuses on how warrior traits can help entrepreneurs, leaders, and other battle through adversity and accomplish their missions. He lives at Hilton Head Island, close to us, and was formerly a councilman in Wyoming, Ohio, which is actually near Cincinnati. So it is with great pride, and we're just shy of Veterans Day here to thank Zachary Green to the show today. Man, I am what a mouthful. What an introduction, Zachary. Great to have you on the show.
Well, Doug, thank you so much. It truly is an honor to get a chance to speak with you and your audience.
Wow. Well, I don't know where to go. We can start with low Earth orbit access satellites. That's not hypersonic unmanned. I thought the hypersonic missile thing was just for China. I didn't know we had it too. Maybe we don't talk about it. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we don't have it. That's the problem. So
okay.
That's one of the things.
Get on that, would you? Get back into that.
Yeah. I've got a team of some extremely smart people that are a hell of a lot smarter than me. So I'm just kind of helping out on the business side, and they're the true rocket scientists.
Yeah. You know, again, thank you for your service, #1. And #2, the veteran entrepreneurs that I know, I'm prejudiced, man. I have right now 3 clients who are veterans. And I love all my clients. Don't get me wrong. If you're listening to this and you're not a veteran, I still love you. But man, these guys, boom, 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 show up on time, pay on time, coachable, leadership qualities. I'm sure you've experienced this in your service, and whatnot. But they make great employees and great entrepreneurs.
Well, that's really the thesis of the book that I just came out with, Warrior Entrepreneur, and it's talking about those intangible traits, not the tangible ones, not the stuff you specifically learn, but things like dedication, teamwork, grit, mission accomplishment. Those are really those traits that carry you from your time in the military to being successful in entrepreneurship, which I can tell you, hands down, way more difficult than being in the Marine Corps, way more difficult than being in the fire service. I've never experienced anything that's taken me to my knees like having been an entrepreneur.
You think entrepreneur is more difficult than being a Marine or a firefighter?
Without question, not even in the same realm.
That's interesting. Okay. Well, I feel better because
in the Marine Corps and the fire service, you have a manual. Everything, literally, how to eat, how to go to the bathroom, how to sleep. It's all in the manual. And you also have a team of people that have been around for hundreds of years that are the absolute top of the top. And you also got a quality of people, the screening process to get in between the academic, emotional, physical things that need to be done. Entrepreneurship, it is a whiteboard. There is absolutely no documents. There's nothing. I mean, we're just now starting to have entrepreneurial classes in college.
Yeah.
And then the problem becomes is we don't have money. You know, as an entrepreneur, it's difficult. So the people you hire sometimes aren't the best people. They're just people. And that right there was really the biggest learning experience for me when I started my entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question for the listeners who are watching this and listening. You're a veteran, you're an entrepreneur, you've got great credentials. What's going to keep people watching this the next 20 minutes? What are some specific things we're going to talk about that they really need to know as far as an entrepreneur?
Well, I'd like to share with you, without having to go through Paris Island or boot camp or go through the fire training, the things that I learned and my brother and sister warriors learned that can make you not just a successful entrepreneur, but successful in life. When the book started, the process, I thought it was going to be just for entrepreneurs. And as I started to write it, I realized, wow, there's just so much more here through this entrepreneurial warrior journey that all of us can learn. And it really comes down to one simple trait, and that is adversity. Now, that was not initially my hypothesis, but what I learned is it's the resistance that makes you grow. Think about when you're working out, you're using weights to cause stress and adversity into your muscles and those fibers, and you're causing them actually to explode. And then when they reassemble themselves, they get stronger. The same thing happens in entrepreneurship. Those early days that are so difficult, where you don't have a great team and you're trying to put that stuff together, that is preparing you ultimately for your crucible. And we all have a crucible at some point in time in our life. It could be an issue in business, getting fired, the company going bankrupt. It could be losing your biggest customer. It could be a health issue. It could be a divorce. There's a whole lot of things. And that adversity helps you prepare you for that crucible, because at the bottom of the crucible is the abyss. And as the great philosopher Nietzsche once said, if you stare long enough into the abyss, eventually the abyss will stare back at you. And that means the abyss has consumed you. So we have to recognize and honor that that abyss is there. The abyss represents failure, represents defeat, it represents giving up. And say, we're going to know it's there, but we're not going to spend too much time, because if you spend too much time there, that's when depression sets in. You start feeling sorry for yourself. And we're going to go back and use all those things we learned, those warrior traits, to help battle through that crucible. The final thing is we have to change as we come out of that crucible. If we don't make a change, we're going to end up there again. And in my case, the change was I needed to hire a CEO. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could put it together. And I was and am a tremendous entrepreneur. But when it comes to a 10-something million dollar a year business, it's a very different skill set than starting a business out of the trunk of your car. And it wasn't until I almost went bankrupt, almost lost my house in foreclosure in my business, that I recognized I got to make a change. So I not only stepped down the CEO, brought in a good high-powered CEO, I had to make some personnel changes, some other changes, and the company just absolutely flourished after that crucible and those changes that I ended up making.
I've talked to a couple of people in law enforcement and military, and I'm a private pilot myself. And one thing I'm curious about in terms of the crucible and that adversity is the training that you do ahead of time. Because muscle memory, if you're in a fight or flight situation, you don't want to fight. You want to be able to be calmly address the situation. Have that calm response, as opposed to the limbic brain, oh, run away response. I know it was done in the military and firefighting. I'm sure you're trained to not run away from the fire, but run into it, right?
It's funny you say that. There's a whole chapter on my book specifically about the science of adversity, the sympathetic, parasympathetic system, limbic brain, which is that part of your brain that you don't think about, it just kind of reacts. And there's a couple things there. First of all, repetition. Everything I learned in the military, it was repetition, repetition. Same thing as a pilot. What is that checklist you're doing before you actually start to take off and you put it together? That repetition is going to start causing these synapses to really get nice and fluid as they come together. But recognizing, as a warrior, there's a couple things you have to do. First of all, you have to process a very large volume of information very quickly, and then prioritize what you want to focus on. And that can't be something you have to sit down and take time. And most people would get really nervous and they get kind of locked up with that. They say there's fight or flight. There's some interesting studies out there that's saying it's fight, flight, and actually a third one, which is freeze. Although I think the freeze is kind of part of that flight situation. So what happens is your brain starts to release these chemicals to get you ready for that fight. It's going to help your breathing. It's going to have more oxygen go to your brain. Your blood pressure is going to increase to cause more blood to flow through the body. Your pupils will start to dilate. And what you learn after a while is you learn how to use that as a tool. I can tell you, for me, my Zen moment when I am the most focused and the most literally super aware of what's going on is when I'm sitting in the back of a fire truck and we're flying down the road with the sirens going and there's flames shooting out of the house and people are screaming. Most people would say, whoa, I'm not going to, that's my Zen place. And if you've ever been in a car accident, if you've ever been in a really, really significant emergency, they always talk about how it slows down. That is actually your body's way of trying to get the superpowers to absorb everything that's happening in this emergency situation. We can apply that to business too. Let me give you a perfect example. You're walking into a major pitch to go into the VC, and you find out right before you walk in there that one of the VCs has worked with you in the past and they don't like you and they're going to poison the whole entire rest of the VCs. Or maybe you have a situation where you forget your PowerPoint and it crashes. At that point in time, you have those decisions: fight, flight, or freeze. And by training and practicing and having that level of confidence, you're able to push through whatever that crucible is, and also become stronger, because you're going to definitely have a secondary opportunity to do that presentation. Maybe you're going to have 2 thumb drives, a second computer. You're going to have maybe email it to somebody ahead of time. So I always tell people, embrace those areas. That sickness you get to your stomach, eventually it will go away. Your body is incredible the way that it protects and defends those things. And it really helps you get into that warrior mindset. But before you get there, you have to experience the adversity. And just one last thing to kind of put a bow around this. Let's take 2 kids. One kid, very wealthy family, very nice white collar community they grew up in. They start to play soccer and they don't get a lot of playing time. And the father and mother call the coach up and yell at them, hey, put my kid in. The kid gets a participation trophy. The kid goes off to a really nice college. And then as soon as they get challenged, they say, you know what, I'm getting triggered. I'm feeling uncomfortable. I need a safe space. And then they get out into the real world. Let's take another kid. He grew up maybe in a bad part of town, maybe didn't have a father. Mom was working 2 or 3 jobs just to be able to make ends meet. He struggled his whole way through high school, getting in trouble. Things are happening. He gets to college, has to work 3 jobs just to be able to pay enough for the tuition. He gets to that same job. Now, all of a sudden, our boss sits us down and tells us something. Hey, you really screwed this project up. I'm really angry with you. This is a real serious problem. The first kid's going to be crushed. They're going to have to go home. They're going to have to take a couple personal days. The second kid's going to be like, brush it off their shoulders. Hey, this is nothing. I can handle it, because they're a warrior mindset and they were able to embrace that adversity, even though they may not think it was a good thing at the time. It was making them unbreakable to the point where they knew nothing that could be thrown at them would stop them.
The training for it. So you were able to train for it in, fire department and military, but you still said that entrepreneur was like much more difficult than those 2 professions. Did the warrior mindset translate right away, or did you have to like reframe it somehow?
No, I mean, it's the intangibles. I mean, the stuff I learned in the military, especially in the Marine Corps infantry, I really can't use those in the civilian world without getting arrested. But what happened was the first 6 months, this concept of mission accomplishment before troop welfare is a real hallmark of the Marine Corps. The concept in the fire service where we say we can't dial 912 after you guys dial 911. When we show up, we have to solve the problem, put the fire out. There is nobody else coming. I was selling product out of the trunk of my car. I was using QuickBooks. I was doing light assembly and manufacturing. I was waiting in line at the post office, getting everything ready. I made $5,000, great.
Yeah.
But then I went to this trade show and we had a soccer tent that we literally put together with duct tape and zip ties. We had cardboard signs. We wrote on them with Sharpies, and next to us was Honeywell and MSA and all these big billion-dollar companies with their $100,000 booths. I had a line of over 100 people deep almost the entire show. There were so many people in line for our booth that the other booths came over at the end of the show and thanked us for the amount of crowds we had. And
what was the product?
Well, it was this glow in the dark material that I invented to help firefighters see each other in the dark. When I started my business, I actually got lost in the fire, and I developed this incredible glow in the dark material that would go on your helmets and on your tools and on your gear. And the tent was there to have a dark areas to show people.
Nice.
And what would happen is there's this concept of what's behind door number 3, what's behind
Sure.
that dark tent.
Yeah.
People kept wanting to go out, and everyone that would come out, their eyes would be real wide. I booked $100,000 in sales in almost 3 days. And everyone's like, Zach, you got to stop taking sales. This is ridiculous, because I didn't have enough money to buy the raw materials. I didn't have a manufacturing process to be able to put that together. I had no infrastructure. And I was like, you know what? I'm a Marine. I can accomplish this mission. I will figure this out one way or the other. As soon as I got home, I refinanced my house, maxed out my credit cards, started taking loans from friends and family, finding new distributors. Most of the distributors, they want their money up front, or not distributors, manufacturers.
Yeah, right.
I've got customers that are municipalities. They're paying me net 60, net 90. So the flow of that money, if it's $100, it's one thing, but in my case, it was tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
I figured it out. And the next trade show, I got a little smarter. I started to build up more inventory. I was able to talk to people. I was able to work with the venture capitalists. So then when the pandemic hit, and we all of a sudden were getting orders in excess of $10 million for plexiglass.
Whoa.
I had already experienced all these things over the last decade. I knew how to work the deals and call in favors and have those people help out. And as a result, we became a Home Depot's #1 distributor of COVID protective products during the pandemic, because we were able to pivot and work with our distributors and be creative with our financing and be creative with the ways that we were able to put all the plexiglass barriers together.
Amazing. I will, as I'm traveling around the past year or so, I'm looking at all the plastic barriers, like, where do those all come from? I guess now I know. So they're coming from you.
Well, they were not a big deal before the pandemic, and then when the pandemic started, it became a big deal. We actually bought some of them, and the broker we were using almost doubled the price, because when you're buying products overseas, you don't really technically pay for them until they hit the dock and clear customs. Right. And we were able to negotiate a deal with them to buy multiple future orders at the original discounted price. Now, it was a gamble. It was a bold gamble, because we would have absolutely been out of business had they called all the POs in and we didn't have the customers. If the pandemic was over in 2 or 3 weeks, I'd be looking for a different company right now to work for or start. But the opposite happened. And that's what you do in the Marine Corps. You got to be bold. You got to make those big moves like that. There's a great saying that Teddy Roosevelt had, one of my absolute favorite quotes of all time. He said, when you're faced with a monumental decision, the best thing to do is the right thing. The next best thing to do is the wrong thing. But the worst thing to do is to do nothing. And in the Marine Corps, even if you mess up, as long as you're making forward progress, you'll never get in trouble. But if you do nothing or you back up, that's when the real big trouble happens.
When I was in college, I was studying film school, but my college roommate, he was not a film guy. He was more military, but he wasn't in the military. When he got out of college, he joined law enforcement. He became a sheriff in LA County. And he told me that back in college. He goes, Doug, you're lamenting all those things. He says, make a decision. The worst, what you just said is like, no decision is a decision, and it's the wrong one. I'm like, all right. It's because
this concept of fail forward, and you don't have that opportunity in corporate America, because corporate America is run by middle-level managers. Middle-level managers in corporate America have really one job: not screw anything up. They're simply trying to get to that next ring. So to get them to be innovative, to take that risk, that's not a good thing. They want to just kind of leave things alone and not push it. Now, the very senior guys, those guys can push it. That's one of the issues that I've always had working in corporate America, which I did for decades. And one of the things that the new company that I'm in the process of putting together, called Warrior Framework, where we go in and train companies how to have that innovation of an entrepreneur, but still that accountability of the military. It's all about making those risks, failing as much as you can, as quickly as you can, to find out what not to do, and be okay with that failure, because that's where innovation happens. But we get so nervous and we're so scared of making a mistake that what happens is we do nothing. And it's just very difficult for us to innovate if we don't have that permission to fail forward, if you will.
It's a hot topic. And it's so much easier when you're a small company and It's just you, like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and try this thing. You know, I'm going to go ahead and do it. At what point does it become a big company? You know, you're doing $1 million, you're a CEO, you own it, no big deal. And you got a, you know, what you said, $10 million company. So at what point does it slow down for most companies?
You know, for me, the turning point for me wasn't the big decisions. It was the multitude of small decisions. And I did not empower the people that I worked with. Half the reason was they weren't really competent enough to do it. The other half was I was a control freak, still am technically. And so having all those decisions have to be funneled to me. And the big decisions were easy for me to make. It's a million small decisions. Hey, should we switch this phone service from this one to this one? Hey, should we go from FedEx to UPS because we can save $1 here? Hey, should we change our parking situation so we can do this? That was the point that got overwhelming to me. And I think to answer your question, it's when you can start to empower your teams to make those decisions. That's really the transfer between being a small business and a 1 or 2 person shop and really getting to that next level. And most entrepreneurs can never make that change, because as the founder, as the person that's starting this, it's very difficult to give that up. The best analogy I always given is being an entrepreneur and having a company that you start is like having a kid. And the reality is, if you keep your kid at home at 25 years old, don't let them get out in the real world, don't let them make mistakes, don't let them do things, you're not being a really good parent. At a certain point, you have to tell your kids, all right, man, I'm kicking you out of the house. You're getting out of the nest. You're going to either fly or you're going to flop down on the ground. But, you know, I've done enough. And that's something that a lot of companies struggle to do, especially when the founder is directly involved in the day-to-day operations.
It's so true. You know, my company's small. I got, you know, 8 people full time with us, and my own staff found a point where, like, why are you doing this, Doug? This is like, oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I need to get out of operations because I'm more in marketing and strategy. So they reminded me of that, and I removed myself from a bunch of conversations, which was, you know, one of my favorite sayings in leadership is, great leaders create other leaders. You know, that's just
absolutely
fundamental.
John Maxwell is really good about that. If you ever read any of John Maxwell's books, very, very good stuff there. You know, what I always tell people is, look, you'll never find anybody that does as good a job as you, period. It's not going to happen. But if you can get someone that does 60% as good as you do or 70% as good as you do, and you hire 2 of them, guess what? They're doing 30 or 40% more than you can. Now you hire 3 or 4 of them. Now all of a sudden they're doing hundreds of percent above what you could do yourself. So it's okay that no one's going to love it as much as you and be as good as you. You just got to find people that can get as close as you can to that level. And then it just becomes a numbers game. You put enough people out there, because eventually those decisions and those things become so overwhelming that one person just can't process it. And that's when you start to develop into what we call in the military span of control. The span of control really is only about 4 people. A lot of people say, oh, you can get 10 people. No, you can't. Once you start getting above 4, maybe 5 people, then you need to develop another manager for that next team, because then it gets really challenging. But as long as your span of control is, I can control 4 people, each of them control 4 people, each of them can control 4 people. Now all of a sudden I can manage a team of several hundred people and still keep that span of control of who my circle is that I'm directly working with, and inspiring and teaching them to be leaders.
Thank you, Lieutenant, for that bit of advice. I totally get it. I'm not a veteran, but I understand that hierarchy has a definite purpose, that you have to have a span of control. I love that. Yeah. I gave my project managers in charge of those 4 people. Perfect. Okay. I'm doing okay. You have a copy of your book you can hold up? Huh?
10 is too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that. I lost you there.
Yeah, I just want to see you hold up the book cover if you got it.
Oh yeah. So here is the book, Warrior Entrepreneur. Just came out a couple weeks ago. We made it to #1 status on Amazon and entrepreneurship, small business in a couple different countries. The book is really divided into 3 sections. The first section, as we talked about, was kind of that science of adversity and talking in ways that how we can hone that skill. The next one is actually my story. Now, I don't have a whole chapter of just me. I kind of weave it in and out. But the real meat and potatoes of this book, and the reason that this book is such an enjoyable read, is there's just a bunch of short stories. You don't need to read this book page to page to page in one setting. You can just say, hey, I need a little inspiration today on serenity, or some inspiration on leadership, or inspiration on perseverance or grit. And you can read pages in those books where some of the stories are 10, 15 pages long. Some are just a paragraph. And I interview entrepreneurs, warriors. I interview one of the most amazing people I get to interview in the book was the very first ever female Marine infantryman. She was born in a Siberian Russian prison. You talk about someone that grew up from the time she was taking her first breath of air around adversity and challenge. And she was the first ever Marine in the history of the Marine Corps as a female to be an infantryman. Those are those stories that are going to inspire you and be able to talk. We talk about the founder of ramen noodles and how he was bankrupt 4 or 5 times till he finally perfected the ramen noodle. We talk about Elon Musk, Walt Disney, all these people, Thomas Edison, the ways that they have kind of taken that same journey that those warriors have, from that resistance and failure and being able to learn from it and eventually progress and do great things in the world. And the hope of this book is you don't have to be a business owner. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. I think the true warrior is that mom that's working 2 or 3 jobs just to kind of help make ends meet. They have that warrior attitude of A, I'm not going to be defeated no matter what happens. And B, whatever you throw at me, I'm not going to use that as a way to make me weaker. I'm going to learn from it and use it as a way to make me stronger and accomplish whatever my missions that come up in the future will be.
Zachary, you are the man. How do people get a hold of you?
So easiest way is email zacharylgreen@gmail.com.
Okay.
Check that regularly. I'm on LinkedIn, again, Zachary L. Green. And then you can also buy the book on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, pretty much anywhere books are sold. If you'd like me to personalize a book for you, you can go directly onto my website, which is warriorentrepreneur.book.com. And I'm more than happy to go ahead and sign a copy for you and talk to you about other ways we might be able to work together.
Outstanding. warriorentrepreneur.book.com, folks. Get this thing. It sounds like a winner. You are a sharp and engaging guy. I'd love to have you back on the show again sometime.
Doug, thank you so much. And thank you for what you do for all our other fellow entrepreneurs and business leaders out there.
You bet. Thanks so much. All right. We'll see you later.
Have a great day. And
don't forget to click the subscribe button below on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, whatever you want. And there's some goodies there for you when you do. This is Doug Crow with the Author Brand Show.